Welcome to Agora Nexus with Atabai, where knowledge and awareness converge. Wisdom begins with curiosity. The unexamined life is not worth living.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're wading into the economic anxieties that have dominated headlines for the last decade or so. Is AI and automation coming for our jobs?
Right.
We've all heard the speculation, loads of it, but the real question is, what does the hard data actually say? About job loss, wage changes, and whether the policy tools we rely on actually work.
That's exactly our mission today. We want to move past the hypotheticals and dive into the measurable impact. We've synthesized research looking at three key things. First, the actual empirical effect industrial robots have already had on local employment and wages.
Okay.
Second, that really crucial distinction between jobs being fully replaced versus those just being changed or augmented. And finally, why the standard fix everyone talks about, worker retraining programs, why that's maybe failing to solve the scale of this problem.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We really need to know if technology is creating mass unemployment or if it's just speeding up a painful and it sounds like very localized economic adjustment. So where do we start? Maybe with how jobs themselves change.
Yeah, let's start there and maybe define our terms quickly, just so we're all on the same page.
Good idea.
So when we talk about automation, that's the general idea, right? A technique for autonomous operation, a task done without a human stepping in. Think manufacturing processes.
Got it.
Then you have industrial robots. These are specific reprogrammable machines doing physical, manual tasks, welding, assembly, moving materials. These are kind of the physical predecessors to modern AI in some way.
Okay, distinct from like a coffee machine.
Exactly. And then there's AI, the current wave technology that independently performs tasks that usually need human intelligence. Self-driving tech is a classic example.
Right. And what's fascinating, you mentioned this exposure paradox from David Otter, the idea that automation doesn't just delete jobs, it fundamentally reshapes the tasks within them.
Precisely. Otter's work highlights this dual nature. Automation can either replace experts, basically automate their core skill, or it can augment expertise, pushing the remaining human tasks towards more abstract, maybe more valuable work.
Okay, examples always help. Give us the difference, replacement versus augmentation.
Let's start with augmentation. Think about proofreaders. Historically, a lot of their job was pretty routine, right? Checking spelling, grammar, basic structure.
Spell check territory now.
Exactly. Automation, like spell checkers, basic editing software, took over those routine bits. The job didn't vanish, but it shifted heavily towards more abstract things, editorial direction, shaping the narrative, helping people actually write better.
So the tech handles the tedious stuff.
Yeah.
And the human gets pushed up into higher level, more conceptual work. A specialist.
That's it. And for those remaining proofreaders, wages actually went up. Their expertise was augmented, the job got more specialized. But, and this is key, the total number of proofreading jobs went down. Fewer but higher skilled workers were needed.
Okay, that makes sense. Value goes up when the grunt work is automated. What about the flip side? The replacement or despecialization?
Okay, look at taxi drivers, or no, rideshare drivers. Here, automation, specifically platform tech like Uber and sophisticated GPS, it removed the need for that core expert skill, knowing all the local routes intuitively.
Right. The knowledge in London, for example.
Yeah, exactly. That single automated task just dramatically lowered the barrier to entry. Suddenly, pretty much anyone with a smartphone could do the job.
Wait, that feels backwards. If you automate part of the job, make it easier, wouldn't you need fewer drivers?
That's the paradox. Because the entry barrier dropped so low, employment for drivers actually soared. It went up by 249% between 2000 and 2020 in the US.
Wow.
But, and here's the catch, because the job became less specialized, needing less specific local knowledge, wages stagnated or even fell. There was just this huge new supply of available workers. Technology basically created more low-wage, lower-skilled jobs in this case.
That distinction is so important. It's not just robots killing jobs, full stop.
Yeah.
It's technology driving wage polarization, pushing jobs either way up into high specialization or way down into despecialized low-wage work.
And we see this trend across the board in task data. Research tracking job descriptions from 1977 to 2018 found something really telling.
What's that?
About 64.5% of tasks removed from jobs were routine, following clear rules, repetitive. But conversely, 75.6% of tasks added to jobs were abstract, needing creativity, reasoning, people skills. The economy's demanding less repetition, more complex thinking.
That is a huge shift, and it explains a lot of the anxiety. But those are tasks. Let's get concrete. What happened when industrial robots actually physically showed up in local areas? What did the NBER research find?
Okay, yeah. This is solid research covering 1990 to 2007 in the U.S. They focused on what they call commuting zones.
Right. Just quickly, why commuting zones? Why is that the right level to look at?
It's basically the local economic area where people tend to live and work. It's the best way to measure local displacement. If a factory closes, we want to know if people found another job nearby or if they just dropped out of the workforce in that specific area. It avoids blurring effects across state lines.
Makes sense. So what was the local impact when robots were introduced?
It was pretty stark, actually. For every one additional industrial robot per 1,000 workers in an average U.S. commuting zone,
Yeah.
it led to a 0.34 percentage point reduction in the local employment to population ratio.
Okay, 0.34 points. Might not sound huge in isolation.
But apply that across the whole workforce over that period, and it suggests a significant chunk of the manufacturing job decline wasn't just about trade automation, was a major local driver, real displacement.
Okay. And what about people's paychecks? What happened to wages?
Also a hit. A significant 0.5% reduction in average local wages. And crucially, these negative effects weren't spread evenly.
Where do they hit hardest?
They were really concentrated. Manufacturing, especially heavily exposed industries like automotive, routine manual jobs, blue-collar assembly work, and the group hit most acutely, workers with less than a college education.
But hang on. The standard economic argument is always that technology destroys some jobs, but ultimately creates new ones, right? New industries, new services, people to fix the robots. Did that happen? Did new jobs pop up locally to offset the losses?
That's what the researchers looked for specifically. And they found, and I'm quoting loosely here, a very limited set of offsetting employment increases in other industries and occupations locally.
So no boom in robot repair jobs locally.
Apparently not, or at least not enough to compensate. They found no robust positive employment gains in any education or occupation group locally that fully made up for the manufacturing losses in those specific areas. The adjustment wasn't happening smoothly within the community.
So if the new jobs aren't showing up locally, what does that do to inequality?
It widens it. The negative wage effects overwhelmingly hit the bottom half of the wage distribution. The data suggests robots might have contributed about 1 percentage point to the rise in the national 90-10 wage gap during that time, reinforcing that trend towards greater inequality.
Okay, so the impact is real, it's localized, and it disproportionately hurts workers with less formal education.
That's what this data suggests, yes.
Facing that kind of disruption, that polarization, the standard policy answer is always worker retraining. You know, the machine takes the old job, we teach the worker a new skill. Simple.
If only it were that simple.
But if the data on robot displacement is this clear, this negative locally, why aren't retraining programs fixing it?
Well, because retraining, at least how it's typically done now, faces some really deep limitations. It goes way beyond just designing a good curriculum. The Brookings Institution analysis points out, first, just the methodological challenge. It's incredibly hard to actually prove these programs are effective because of non-random selection bias.
Meaning the folks who sign up are already the most motivated, the go-getters, compared to the average laid-off worker.
Exactly. They often have more initiative than the control group you'd compare them against. So the program looks successful, but maybe it's just capturing the inherent drive of the participants. But beyond that measurement problem, the sources point to 3 really fundamental limits. These explain why retraining isn't the silver bullet everyone hopes for.
Okay, let's walk through those 3 limits. They sound important for understanding why this is so tough. What's the first one?
It's the job supply question. Basically, even if you retrain workers perfectly, are there actually enough desirable, secure jobs available for them? The real concern for a displaced worker isn't just, how do I find any job? It's often, how do I upskill for more desirable work? If a town just lost its main factory, training everyone locally for coding jobs that don't exist there, well, it's kind of pointless, isn't it?
Yeah, you're training them for a job market that isn't there, or it's somewhere else entirely.
Right. Retraining assumes the demand exists, but the NBER data we just talked about shows those offsetting local gains often don't materialize quickly, if at all.
Okay, that's a big one. What about the people themselves, the human side?
That's the second limit, and it's often overlooked: social and health barriers. The sources show that participants in these programs are disproportionately likely to come from really vulnerable backgrounds,
Like what?
facing things like homelessness, single parenthood, maybe past criminal offenses. You've got serious social and health issues weighing on you. Just sitting in a classroom trying to learn a new technical skill, it's often just not effective.
Yeah, basic needs have to come first.
Absolutely. And then there are older workers too. They're often most at risk from automation, but they might have less interest in a long, intensive retraining program if they're, 5 or 10 years from retirement. Different priorities.
That makes sense. And the third limit. This sounds like it ties directly into the speed of AI now.
It really does. It's what the sources call the foggy future. Retraining organizations are constantly playing catch-up. They struggle to predict what skills will actually be needed in the labor market, especially with AI changing things so fast.
So they risk training people for yesterday's jobs or maybe tomorrow's obsolete jobs.
Exactly. They might invest huge amounts of time and money reskilling someone from one job that's vulnerable to automation right into another one that's also on the chopping block. They're trying to hit a moving target in the fog.
Okay, so we've got a policy response that's hard to measure, runs up against basic supply and demand problems, doesn't always account for the real-life struggles of the people it's trying to help, and can't reliably predict the future. That's quite a list of problems.
It paints a challenging picture, yeah.
It's clear the localized pain from automation, like industrial robots, is real. But let's zoom out again. What about the overall risk across the entire economy? Are only manual jobs truly at risk?
Oh, definitely not. SHRM data estimates that about 15.1% of all U.S. employment, that's around 23.2 million jobs, has tasks that are at least 50% automatable with current tech.
15%, that's substantial. What kinds of jobs are most exposed? Still manufacturing.
Production occupations are definitely high risk, yes. But surprisingly, perhaps, so are computer and mathematical occupations. They estimate about 32% of those jobs are highly automatable.
Wait, computer and math? That's pure white-collar work. Those are the jobs people are being retrained for. How can AI displace coders, analysts?
Well, think about what some of that work involves. Pattern recognition, processing massive data sets, even generating code or summarizing information. These are things that large language models and other AI tools are getting remarkably good at.
Wow.
But, and this is important, we have to factor in what are called non-technical barriers. Even if the tech can do a task, human preference often gets in the way of full replacement.
Like what? Give me an example.
Healthcare is a good one. Studies show patients overwhelmingly prefer a human doctor, maybe one using AI tools, but they don't want to be treated by AI alone, even if the AI is technically capable. That desire for human interaction, for empathy, it acts as a brake on displacement.
That's a perfect segue to our final point, creative jobs. Generative AI is writing text, making images, composing music. This isn't routine work at all. It's abstract, high skill. Does that exposure paradox we talked about apply here too?
It absolutely does, but the debate about the consequences is really active right now. You see kind of a split view emerging.
Okay, what's the optimistic take? The augmentation view.
Yeah, the augmentation view sees AI as this incredible productivity booster for creatives. It handles the busy work, maybe generates starting points, takes care of variations. The argument is that AI is great at combining its training data in novel ways, so creatives who master these tools will become, as one person put it, insanely more creative and productive. It multiplies the output of top talent.
Okay, if it makes a great artist 10 times faster, that sounds like a net positive maybe?
Potentially. But then you have the other side, the replacement or devaluation view. This perspective, often voiced by artists and designers themselves, is more worried.
Worried about what specifically?
They argue that AI, by easily mimicking and combining the styles of top artists to create pretty good derivative work, well, it might just devalue the work of the vast majority of human artists who are trying to climb that ladder.
How so?
If a baseline level of good enough creative work becomes essentially free and instant, it could kill the economic incentive for many people to even try to compete or develop their unique voice. One source called it an assimilated manufacturing of humanness. It commoditizes creativity in a way.
So the value shifts almost entirely from the technical skill of execution to the originality of the idea or the direction.
That seems to be the crux of it, yeah. And we also need to be realistic about the tools now. Current large language models, like GPTs, are actually better suited for creativity generating plausible language, different styles, brainstorming, than they are for hardcore analytical tasks.
Really? Better at writing a poem than doing complex math?
In many ways, yes. Their factual accuracy or logical reasoning on complex problems can still be quite unreliable. They're amazing style mimics and text generators, but not necessarily fonts of objective truth or deep analysis.
You know, this whole thing reminds me of previous tech shifts. Like, photography didn't kill painting, it just changed what painting was for. Streaming didn't kill vinyl records. Vinyl just became this more intentional, high-connection object for enthusiasts.
That's a great analogy.
It feels like that human desire for genuine connection, for novelty, for an original human perspective, that might be the ultimate non-technical barrier that keeps certain roles valuable, even if AI can do parts of the job.
It might well be. So let's try to synthesize this. What we've seen from the sources is that automation, particularly industrial robots historically, has accelerated the removal of routine tasks. This significantly impacted employment and wages, especially for less educated workers in specific local areas.
Right, and those job losses weren't immediately offset locally.
Correct. And the policy tools we typically reach for, like worker retraining, seem ill-equipped currently. They struggle with the social complexity, the measurement issues, and just keeping pace with the sheer speed of change, especially looking forward to AI.
Okay, so let's wrap up. The historical data from 1990 to 2007 showed robots displaced workers without creating enough new local jobs to compensate. Now, if we accept that modern AI, especially generative AI, might represent an even bigger, faster shock, and if we acknowledge that the unemployment and the wage gaps hit vulnerable workers the hardest, the question we want to leave you with is this. If retraining programs as they stand aren't enough, what kind of systemic societal response is needed? What do we need to do differently to navigate this huge economic shift in a way that truly preserves worker livelihoods, opportunity, and frankly, dignity?
If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any episode. Your support means the world to us.